When it comes to running a successful business, are you a wannabe or are you a professional business person? The video you're about to watch was the opening keynote speech at the 2022 National Entrepreneurs Convention. It was filmed live at the ICC in Birmingham in front of over 1,500 business owners and entrepreneurs. And in it, I'll share with you exactly how you can stop guessing what to do as an entrepreneur and start making sure that you're doing the right things in the right way, in the right order, at the right time. I think you'll find this really useful. I'm going to give you two questions here, and you'll see, I think, obviously, which is the better question. And I'm not suggesting that the answers are easy, by the way, but this is where your thought process has to be. So, the majority of businesses, as we sit here on a late September Sunday morning, if they're business owners that might be thinking about their business and their what's happening economically, a lot of them will be, how am I going to survive this? And they're the ones that the media love to roll out, and they'll get on telly and all sorts of things. But how much better is that second question? If you sat here on a September morning, how could I actually add? Oh, it might be you pick the number. 50 grand, 100 grand, 500 grand, I don't know what it is, but how could I add a chunk to my sales profitably by the end of next year? Can you see how that, in an instant, switches your focus? And how much more useful that will be in getting you to where you want to get to? Because this is a real practical illustration of how you think actually means. Because if you allow yourself to get sucked in to the how do we survive this, it will close off automatically and instinctively. Your brain will shut down on exploring lots of possibilities. Whereas actually coming at the second question, which is no less valid because you're in control and you get to decide, by the way. And there are plenty of people here. There's lots of people here in this room today whose businesses are in much ruder health, who personally are much wealthier than they were this time last year. And when we regather in 12 months' time, the same will be true. And you get to choose. And that picking the question that you allow your brain to focus on is a really good start point. So you have to get clarity on what it is, where you actually want to get to. And move it, there needs to be a number there. That's the first step. And then the second step, it gets a bit more complicated now. Because the second step, and we've talked about this for the last 2 or 3 years, but really this is absolutely coming to the fore now. And I tell you now, we're making some adjustments within EC, and you'll see us talk more and more about this second point. Because I actually see the role of EC moving forward is about helping our members to become properly professional business owners. And we've talked about how we're in the era of the professional business person, and we're going to see that more than ever in the next 12 months, because the professional business people will be fine throughout this recession and any downturn that comes, whatever market they're in. It's the wannabe amateurs that are going to struggle. And a professional business person, he or she understands and is in control of what is happening in their business. That's a simple sentence, that, but actually, most businesses cannot tick that box. There are things about most businesses that the owner either doesn't understand or is not in control of. But the professional business person can tick both those boxes. And at times like this, it isn't mandatory to follow the crowd. We don't have to do what the BBC or Sky News tell us. It's not mandatory to shrink and cut costs and batten down the hatches. It is not mandatory to have hope for the best as your only strategy, or God forbid, hope the politicians do something. Oh, it's the government's fault. Fucking isn't. It's your fault. What happens to the business? It's not mandatory to bury your head in the sand and just carry on as you are. The struggle and the hardship that so many of our peers in business are going to experience is not inevitable individually for any of us. It's in our control. I've taken some very conscious decisions. I am not going to stop investing in the growth of my business just because the economy is wobbling. This is the time, and history teaches us this. Whichever downturn you want to look at historically, the people that invest in the downturns are the ones that see the biggest returns by miles when it comes back up. And when the vast majority panic and jump ship, and some of them will drown, those that are keeping calm heads, those professional business people, they will prevail. And the businesses that will go to the wall, and there will be plenty of them, I'm sure, in the months ahead, and the media will definitely tell us about them, but a lot of them will be going to the wall because the quality of thinking of the business owner was not where it needed to be. Because the majority will stop investing. They're doing the opposite. The majority are not taking risks. They think they're playing it safe, when in actual fact the opposite is true. They're not willing to learn and grow or to innovate or to do things differently. They're too busy, frankly, shitting themselves about, to even see opportunity, let alone seize it. And I've never met this guy. I'd love to meet him. But I've read a lot about him, as I'm sure you have as well, Warren Buffett. And I don't really kind of, the word he uses in this quote kind of grate a little bit with me, well, one word in particular. But I think it is quite important. And he is when it comes to investing and money and business, he's one of the smartest people alive on this planet. And be greedy when others are fearful. A lot of his fortunes have been made, when times have been economically challenging. And whilst I don't like the greedy bit, the point is, when people retreat and panic and go back, that's the time. This is time. It's time for you to be Simba. So you have to become this professional business person. And I thought, well, this is all very well and good, Nigel. You've talked about this for a while now, but you've got to give people clarity. So I'm going to give you real clarity now as to the symptoms and signs of the characteristics of a professional business person. Because I've got a list for you. I've got a list, and I'm going to describe the contrasting behaviors of what I call wannabes. And there's nothing, I'm not being derogatory to one, but wannabes, people who talk a good game maybe, the enthusiastic amateurs. When it comes to golf, just to be clear, I'm a wannabe. All right, I love my golf. I get very excited about my golf, but I'm not very good at it. And as opposed to the professionals who understand and are in control of their business. So there's the whole bunch of these that I've got. These are behaviors, and you will recognize as I go through them. And it's not. No one's going to ask you. It's not a test. But as I go through these, I'm going to give you contrasting behaviors: the wannabe behavior, the professional business owner behavior. And as I go through them, you can start to tick them off. You can start to see where you've got gaps. You can start to see maybe where your opportunities are. Because I promise you, when you tick all 21 of these behaviors in the professional business owner box, you ain't got nothing to worry about at all. You will sail through whatever the economy throws at you, and your business will emerge, triumphant and very successful. So, first one, wannabes, they do hope for the best. They're typically quite optimistic people, and they will absolutely hope for the best. Whereas professional business people, they have a plan. It goes back to that question, how do I survive this? Hope for the best. How do I get to this volume of turnover or this level of profitability in the next 12 months? So very, very straightforward there. And you need to be, I would urge you to be, the professional business owner, quite critical of themselves here to the extent, how clear is my plan? Does anybody else know what it is? Have you shared your numbers? When are you going to get there by? Is it where the focus? That's what the in control bit means. So hope for the best, has a plan is number one. Wannabes, and we see this, this is a characteristic that we see a lot when people first come into EC. And when people first come into EC, and one or two, by the way, that never shift or seem to move on from it, but they come in and they want answers. And they come to us looking for answers, which at one level, that's understandable, Nige. Well, it is, but the professional business people, what they want to know is what are the right questions. And so often, the questions that I get asked, I can see straight away, I see where you're coming from, but it's not the right question. What the professional business people know is that the questions you ask are actually what determines your lifestyle, ultimately. There's an absolute linear connection between the questions you ask and where you actually end up. So, for instance, if your sales aren't where you want them, let's just say that August was a poor month in your business, hypothetically. So people coming to me and they say, what new marketing should I start? Should I hire some new salespeople? Who can get me better SEO? So they start to look at the problem to fix sales. But if your sales aren't high enough That's not the problem. That's a symptom of the problem. We have to go a little bit deeper, because inadequate sales, whether it's in a month or a quarter or a year, they're always the symptom of something else. For instance, people haven't got clarity on who their target market is. They're getting the leads are coming in, but the conversion's not happening in the business. They've got salespeople, one of whom is massively underperforming. Maybe there is a problem with lead flow. They've not had a referral in months or years. Maybe there's no differentiation. Maybe you're seen as just the same as everyone else in your marketplace. Maybe your messaging is wrong. We see that a lot. People, just because you're so close to it, and the wannabes don't see that actually their messages are not resonating and connecting with their audience. Some businesses just got a really weak brand, so it's really hard for them to consistently get customers. In a lot of cases, what they're trying to sell, the offer is missing. It's very low caliber. Sometimes they're getting the customers, but they're not maximizing the sales from those customers. You see, I could go on all day around this. But that's why the professional business person wants to know the right questions, because the questions are always a couple of layers beneath the surface, and the wannabes just stay at the superficial level. That's the difference between wanting answers and wanting to know the right questions. Wannabes, typically, in business, are really hard workers. They'll put a lot of effort in, and they're often really good at reacting to what happens. But the consequence of that is they're really, really busy, but they never actually get anywhere. As opposed to the professional business person, who is much more thought through and planned in terms of what they, in particular, are doing with their time. That's where if you've wrestled with implementing in 90 minutes for the last 10 years, you're going to still be in the wannabe camp, because the professional business owners have got that sorted. It's a good example there. Wannabes are people pleasers, typically. They let other people's lack of planning, whether it's customers or staff or suppliers, become their problem. A lot of wannabes like to be liked. There's nothing wrong with that per se at all. They like to fix things and are very good, because they're good at reacting, as we just talked about. But as a consequence, they tend to get dumped on. They become a little bit of a martyr some of the time. But the price they pay for that is the business can't be driven forward in the way that it could or should be. As opposed to the professional business person who has clarity on what we call their terms. I'll explain terms in a second. And they've got a clear plan to get there. And that clear plan supersedes everything else. There's one of my masterminders wanted some help with a newsletter. And with a little bit of writing and positioning, it's quite an interesting thing. And it's the right thing for him to do. And he came to me 2 weeks ago, and I'd really like to help him. And but I said, we've got this convention. Nothing else has got a look in our business, really, for the last 4 or 5 weeks with anybody, really. Because this is happening. You're all turning up here on Sunday morning. We've got to be ready. And as a consequence, our plan for the convention superseded everything else. And you can understand that. Well, that's obvious, Nigel. Yeah. Well, there should be things in your business, might not be it'd be different to the convention, but there should be things in your business that the plans for which should supersede everything else. Professional business people have that. Terms, by the way, I'll talk more about this tomorrow morning. It's understanding the time that you want to put into your business, the enjoyment and effort and energy that you put in, that's the E, the resources that you're prepared to put in, the money that you need out of the business, and indeed your sanity, what works to fulfill you. We'll talk a lot more about that tomorrow. I don't want to dwell on terms now. It's not the big piece, but it's an important reference. So the fifth difference, wannabes and professional business people, wannabes think that when they're working hard, and lots of them do, that they're being productive. But I can tell you that is so not the case. In lots of cases, people running businesses really are working hard, but they're not going anywhere. They're on that hamster wheel. And as a consequence, they're a little bit stuck. Whereas the professional business person is thinking properly, understands the difference between knowing something and doing it, and has got those plans. As you can see, a lot of these things are starting to be linked together. Number 6, wannabes have little respect for their time, and they allow others to suck up their time. That could be staff, could be customers.
You'll know if it applies to you, as opposed to the professional business person who does do their 90 minutes, who does have pre-scheduled meetings. Their calls are pre-scheduled. Their work's got end times. Their schedule is thought through to make sure the things that matter get done. It's a big, big difference between professional business owners and wannabes. And wannabes typically work in their business as glorified employees. They're on the tools, on the ground, in the trenches, however you want to phrase it. The business needs them in order to flourish and deliver. Whereas the professional business person has no functional role in their business, or a very minor one, if any. The business runs without them having to conduct and pull all the strings.
Sorry to interrupt, but did you know that most members of Entrepreneur Circle more than double their business? I mean, the numbers don't lie. But to see why our members have got such meaningful growth, click the link in the description and try Entrepreneur Circle yourself today. You can try it completely for free. I think you'll love it even more than I know you're loving this video. Speaking of which,
wannabes typically don't use video in their marketing, often because they don't like being on camera. And they haven't joined the dots and recognized, as professional business people have, that actually video is so powerful in their marketing. So the professional business owners use it a lot. And they know how well it works, and they know what a difference it makes. And so they've found a solution, one way or the other, but they're utilizing video in a way that wannabes typically aren't. Number 9 is, this is quite a biggie, this. This is a realization that I had this year. And my realization that I had was this. I realized that I can tell, and you can tell as well, how successful someone is or is going to be by the size of the problems that they are tackling. Does that make sense? So when I get people, it might be in a circle session or in one of our clinics, or it might be a conversation. If people are coming to me with what I would call really small problems, and I'm not diminishing them. I mean, they need to be dealt with, the small problems. But if you're waking up thinking about a staff issue, or the copy on a leaflet or a letter or whatever, you're in the detail, you're in the weeds. If you're focusing on those little problems, then you're never able to tackle and have the bandwidth to tackle the big problems. So wannabes spend their time tackling little problems, tactical things, small things that they do make a difference today, and they are problems that need solving, but the professional business owners have got other people looking at their problems because they know that embracing the big problems, remember those listed, if your sales is wrong, how can we improve our conversion? If we could get our conversion from 1 in 6 converting to 1 in 5, that would give us a 17% uplift in sales next year. That's a big problem. Let's focus on that. How can I get from 1 in 6 to 1 in 5? As opposed to, I need an HR policy because I've got someone that's been sick 3 times in the first month. That's a little problem. Just get it dealt with. We've got to get on the big problem. The big problems are how you move the dial. And if you don't believe me, that question again tells you it. Little problem. How am I going to survive? I mean, that's not little in the whole scheme of things. But the big problem, how can I add 100 grand to my sales next year? Despite all the shit that's happening out there, how could we grow top line by 100 grand next year and maintain our margins? That's a great problem to wrestle with. That's the problem to go to bed thinking about, to wake up contemplating. Big problems are embraced by professional business people. Listen, you like number 10. A lot of you will relate to number 10. Wannabes do random acts of marketing. They need some customers, so they do some marketing. And then they get some customers and the marketing stops. There's no rhythmic activity typically in the businesses of wannabe business owners. Whereas the professional business person knows that rhythmic acquisition of customers is always preceded by rhythmic activity. And they've got that activity nailed. There's always stuff going on in the business of a professional business owner. There's no random acts of marketing at all. Wannabes play it safe, so they're very typically a lot more risk averse. And it's not that professional business owners are cavalier with it, but they are prepared and are comfortable taking a risk. They don't bet the whole farm, but But actually, do you know what? I am going to drop a couple of grand on this. Because actually, if it comes off, the upside's massive. And if it all fails, well, I'll deal with it. It's not 2 grand's not going to kill me. Let's do this and push ahead. And actually, and do you know what? The decision is made in that time frame as well, as opposed to being anguished over for weeks and days. I haven't got it in this list, but I could have, because typically professional business people are much more decisive than wannabes. Wannabes ooh and and flip and flop and sleep and drag and drag on. Professionals are much more decisive. Feeds into the next one, number 12. Wannabes are very good at procrastinating. They've got it to become a factor part of their life. Their to-do list is long. They're very well intentioned, just to be clear, but they struggle to get the execution level at the same level as the professional business people who take massive action. And of course, the 90 minutes typically play a big part in that. And wannabes like to have certainty, so they're always looking, or often are looking, for a perfect plan. Whereas the professional business person recognizes that good is good enough. Key words there, good is good enough. Not slightly below average is good enough. Good is good enough. And they get going. Number 14 is a biggie. I've met 2 people this month who have been quite proud of the fact that they haven't taken a holiday since COVID ended. Now, again, they're wannabes. They're wannabes. It's not something to be proud of at all. You cannot function at your highest level on a continual basis, week in, week out, month in, month out, without getting yourself recharged and looking after yourself and your own batteries. You get too fatigued. It's a really dumb thing to do. Yet a lot of wannabes wear it as a badge of pride almost. It's almost validation of how hard they're trying and how hard they're working. And at one level, I do recognize the truth of it, just to be clear, but it's not a badge of honor. It's actually an indication, oh, fuck, you're still in the wannabe camp. Because professional business people schedule their rest and their relaxation. Their holidays for next year are booked, and they've scheduled their thinking time into their working week. Little secrets now coming up. The next 3 are all kind of connected. Because wannabes typically avoid their numbers, usually because they don't understand them properly. And because they don't understand them properly, therefore they're a little bit difficult. And also it's a little bit scary, because if I actually properly understand my numbers, they might not tell me what I think I want to hear. So actually the head goes in the sand a little bit, and they can't tick that box as they understand and are in control of their business because they haven't got a grasp on their numbers. Whereas the professional business person does understand his or her numbers, and they're all over them. Even though in the beginning it might have been quite hard for them. Because I think it's not the natural space for lots of us as entrepreneurs, isn't our numbers? But it's a bit like learning to drive. Once you've put the effort in and had a few lessons, anyone can do it. So anyone can move up there. But the wannabes, for some reason, never quite make the step. Now this is number 16, a very specific one. And I put this in because this will be very, very important for almost all businesses over the next 12 months. And I've talked about it from this stage before. But the wannabes, despite hearing me talk about it, they have no idea what their operating cash flow was last month, or indeed any month for that matter. They've no idea what it is. Don't even probably understand what operating cash flow is, whereas the professional business person absolutely knows what their operating cash flow was last month, because it is the lifeblood of their business, and they are all over it. Operating cash flow is an accounting term. It is a thing. Okay, if you're using Xero or QuickBooks, you can press a button and your software will tell you, like instantly, if it's been set up properly, what your operating cash flow is. I've got a little picture here of, this is it's always the first page in my management account. It is every month. I've kind of blurred the numbers a bit. But what I've got at the top is the cash at the start of the month. And then what you'll see, I've got 2 companies, effectively, Entrepreneur Circle and N5. We've got 2 entities, but we just consolidate them to run the business. So the first 2 lines are accounts receivables. So that's my sales, effectively. But not the sales that I've invoiced, the cash that actually came in. This is all cash on a cash flow statement. So how much cash came in the month from something that we'd invoiced, but it's the cash that came in. Then I've got the accounts pay, or the operating expenses paid. That's the bills that I've paid, so the cash that's gone out. which may or may not be different. For instance, so some of our bills, we might get an invoice in September for all the catering for this event, but I won't actually probably pay it until the beginning of October, so it'll be in October's cash flow. Does that make sense? So it's all cash on the cash flow. So receipts paid, bill, expenses paid, and then my salaries, pension contributions, director's drawings, and then taxes, which would be typically VAT or indeed 1 year's corporation tax. But they get in there. That is the operating cash flow. So that tells you, so what's happened to your cash in the month? There is a little bit underneath, and we've got a small loan, so there's a loan repayment goes through, and then I've got my closing cash balance there. And then what I've got on the second page of my management accounts is a bar chart like this. And this is what a healthy business should look like in most industries or sectors. So what you have is, you have 2 months when you have very positive operating cash, and then you have 1 month when you go underwater typically because you pay the VAT bill. That makes sense? So you pay, the cash goes out. So that's a healthy pattern, is that? And you can see how that's progressing. We got quite close to even not going underwater. But that's, you see, and you can see the pattern, you see the journey. Now, that is the best aid to good sleep that any business owner can have, especially in times like these. Because when your cash is okay, it's true that cash is key. If you've got cash, you're fine. If you're generating cash on a monthly basis, you're going to be fine. But if because you're not generating cash, as long as you know about it, you can then take steps to do things about it. But the wannabes haven't got a fucking clue. They don't even know what operating cash flow is, let alone look at it every month. The professional business people do, and it become really, really important. Your accountants, as an industry, should be so much more practical. There's plenty of accountants. There's Crystal Clear Accounting. There's John Davis Accountants. They're all here in the expo. Go talk to them, because this stuff is what they do for their clients, and it makes such a massive difference. Wannabes, number 17. Wannabes, these are all connected now, because wannabes are focused on like this week or this month. So it's all about paying the bills. It's all about getting the orders in to just keep it moving and keep it going. Whereas professional business people know what their business needs to do to deliver their terms number. Remember I talked about step number 1, you need a number, you need a target, you need a goal. Other thing about wannabes, number 18, they don't pay themselves properly. And again, some of them wear that as a badge of honor as well. Oh, I've been reinvesting everything in the business. Well, you're stupid. Because none of us, we can't live on fresh air. And you're fulfilling, especially because typically wannabes are doing work in the business. They've got a day job in the business for which they should be being paid. Professional business people pay themselves properly every single month. Not necessarily profligately, but they pay themselves properly. Their bills are covered. Number 19, you like number 19. Wannabes look at their bank account most days. They don't have any choice. Because they're linked to, getting through this week or this month. Be interesting for you to know, and I promise you this is true. Professional business people do not look at their bank account very often at all. They run their business via their management accounts and their weekly scorecard. And they rarely check the bank account because they know it's okay. They know it's okay because they're getting the right information through. So they don't have to be on the bank every day. It's a big difference, big characteristic. You'll know which camp you are in. Wannabes don't know what their monthly break-even figure is. There is one in every business. It's not difficult to work out. Again, your accountant can help you. If the accountant's not helping you, get a new accountant. It's easy to change. There's some really great accountants in the EC world. But knowing what your monthly break-even figure is, it's a starting point. No one's going to get rich on it. You have to get beyond there, because at break-even you don't make any money. But professional business people do know what their break-even figure is, and their break-even figure includes paying themselves properly. Does that make sense? It's not like, because if you don't put the pay in for you in your break-even, then it's not your break-even. And they get there every single month. And then the last one I've got for you today, wannabes, number 21. Wannabes tolerate all sorts of shit that they shouldn't, especially with staff. A lot of these are linked together, A lot of these are linked together because they're focused on little problems and they're sucked into the weeds, but they tolerate things that they should not tolerate. Whereas the professional business person has standards and they don't tolerate breaches. We know things go wrong from time to time, but we don't tolerate things. And because we know that you always get more of what you tolerate. Always, whether it's shitty customers or whatever the problem is, you get more of it. Then my final one, number 22, wannabes are always looking for the quick fix. They are regularly seduced by bright, shiny objects, whereas professional business people has a system and processes and understand what we call the 9 steps. I'm going to whiz through the 9 steps very quickly, because that's what becoming a professional business person means. Now, there's quite a lot of bits in there. So nice. You said there's 4 things. So just give me 22. Well, no, I'll give you a checklist, because some of those 22 you'll be on the right side of already. But and some of them it'll be quite easy to move to the right side. Now I've made you aware of them, and then with the right help, you can move the rest potentially quite quickly. But having a clear target, number 1. Becoming a properly professional business person, number 2. And then if you understand and follow the 9 steps, that there genuinely are 9 steps to building a super successful business. And I'm grateful to my good friend Martin Norbury for his help in helping me to get real clarity and to distill a lot of what EC's been doing into these 9 steps. And the 9 steps are very straightforward. You have a clear goal and target. You've got to be really clear what we're shooting at. Cannot just be survival if we're building a super successful business. So the clear goal and target's number 1. Then we have to understand our numbers, and then we've got to formulate a plan to deliver the numbers that fit the target. It's really straightforward. Once we've got a plan, we'll know the team that we need and the roles that have to be there to make that happen. And again, I'm going through this pretty quickly, but once you've got clarity on that bottom layer, can be quite straightforward. With the team in place, you can then properly crack rhythmic acquisition, as opposed to doing random acts of marketing. But because acquiring customers, I'll talk about this tomorrow, you've got to be able to keep them and build a reputation, so you have to deliver a great experience. But once you're acquiring customers rhythmically and you're delivering a great experience and you've got the right team in place, then actually you just got to monitor the routine. You just got to make sure that things are happening in the right way. That's what professional business people do. We can then tweak the levers, so we can then just keep things on track from what we're seeing on the monitoring, and then we get to choose what we do with our future, because we've now got a business that is running without us, that is delivering what we want it to run. And I know that might appear at one level so simplistic, but actually those are the 9 steps. The problems come when business owners dive in at step number 5 and try and crack rhythmic acquisition, but we're not clear on what the target is. We haven't got the right team in place, and there's no proper plan anyway. So we start doing bits, and that's when it becomes all fulfilling. And I recognise, we're all on a journey. There's things I would do differently with EC and with the things that we teach and that we shared over the years. If I could have my time again, because that bottom layer, that foundation layer, is so important. Having clarity on what you actually want to achieve, which might be harder than it sounds, but we're clear we want to achieve, we understand why. Then we understand what the numbers mean, and all the numbers, because a lot of that, even understanding your margins and the difference that makes, and then properly getting, let's get the plan in place to do it in the right way. The number of times in Mastermind, someone thinks they need 400 customers to get where they want to get to, but actually when we do some work and we work it through, actually 200 customers, paying them quite a bit more money, is actually going to be much easier to get, for instance. That's where the formulation of the plans come in. But once you've got the foundations, then we can execute properly. And once you've got the execution off, then the top layer is all about the optimization. And that's what our master plan program is all about, which there's a standout there. And that chart on the kind of slightly more complicated chart that you see on the screen is on page 43 of your guide. But those 9 steps are really, really key. And you don't have to be part of master plan. This is not a pitch. But those steps matter. And they matter a lot over the next 12 and 18 months in these economic conditions that we find ourselves in. We've got a clear target, become a professional business person, follow the 9 steps. You're in a really, really great place at this point. And then the 4th thing, as we go through this economic winter, is you have to invest in yourself in terms of, and it's not money particularly, it's probably more often be time. But what is fueling your brain? What is keeping your head in the right place? Where are your ideas coming from? Where's your stimulus coming from? Who is challenging your thinking? Because it's how you think that will be the beginning of shaping your destiny. And there will be an investment of some sort. And as I say, for many people, it will be an investment of time. For some, it will be an investment of time and money. But we can't, any of us going out into this wilderness alone, it would be very foolish at times like this. And every millionaire, if you talk to them, we've got some on stage today, and the VIPs will be able to meet them and talk with them backstage if they don't cover it. But any successful business person that you talk to had a decision point. I've talked about mine many times, my decision to go to an event in Florida. And I ended up having to almost got permission from my dad. I was 36 years old. But my dad said it was all right, I could go, so I went. But it changed everything for me. That was my decision point of an investment in myself to get the right input. And that's why it's the fourth element of my plan. So clear target and goal, become a professional business person, follow the 9 steps, and be prepared to continually invest in yourself is the best way, not just to get through the next 18 months, but to flourish and genuinely thrive as a result of it. If, instead, anyone deploys the same old thinking, then you'll get the same old results. But because it's a shrinking market, then actually those results will end up with a business that shrinks. And the winter that's coming will probably be quite painful.